Well, let's move right into multi-platforming and Wombat's Overwatch Onslaught and news and stuff.
That's the big story, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, EA shut down Visceral, the studio that was working on the single-player Star Wars game.
Most well-known for Dante's Inferno.
Okay.
Remember that game?
No, yes. They were most known for
They also
Dead
did Dead Space. I know. It was a joke.
Right. I get it. Oh, I put a link on here that doesn't even work. What the hell's wrong with me?
Yes. But there's no more Visceral.
There's no more Visceral.
No Dante's Inferno 2.
Right. And the Star Wars game that they're working on, I guess, is being totally revamped by somebody else?
Yes.
Wow, it's between this one and like Star Wars 1313, there's some bad luck in these single-player Star Wars games. Can't seem to push them out.
Well, Star Wars Battlefront 2 has a single-player campaign.
That's right, but it also has loot boxes.
And a pretty hefty multiplayer experience.
Yes.
And battle droids.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that this one was going to have battle droids.
Roger.
Roger.
Roger, we got loot boxes.
Yeah. It's funny because they say, like, oh, I'm surprised that they shut down. I mean, it seems, again, I don't know the ins and outs. So they shut down the whole studio because they are not canceling the game, but changing the direction of the game. Was there a reason why the people at Visceral weren't able to make the game in this new direction?
Well, they said that they were going to try to take some of those people and distribute them as they could. I think it was just the high ups at Visceral. They probably did not agree with EA, and EA probably did not care. Is my guess. They just took the game and said, okay, it's over here with the studio now.
We don't want to make your game. We want to make our game. So we're not going to do it. And they said, fine, you're fired, basically.
Yeah, because it was, is it Amy Hennig? Is that her name?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because she was the one doing the game, right?
She was
Uncharted
writing.
fame.
She was the writer, I believe.
Okay.
But then again, I don't know what kind of executive position she had at Visceral.
I would assume she had a nice title at Visceral, but I forgot this game was in development, honestly.
Me too. Yeah, I didn't have any idea.
We hadn't seen much of anything, right? We hadn't heard much of anything. I tend to think that this probably wasn't going well, is my guess.
That was pretty much the rumor, that the game is supposed to be a mess, I guess. I'm sure, like, if the game was going fine, like the development was going fine and smooth, it was not a question of like, hey, we're just not going to make a single player game without loot boxes or whatever. I'm sure it was a combination of those two things, like that the game the development wasn't going well. And hey, also it's not Destiny.
Right. Also a combination of Mass Effect is $9.
Mass Effect is free if you have EA access. I mean,
well, sure. Right.
You know, and Amy Hennig is the creative director at Visceral Games, or was. So.
Right after I bought Mass Effect Andromeda, it went to the vault.
Yeah, which is pretty funny. But didn't you get the deluxe edition?
I sure did, and I got it on PS4 where it is enhanced for the Pro.
So there you go. Yeah. See, you're
I don't
still
feel bad.
You're still a bit ahead.
It's still in the wrapper.
You can always return it.
Right.
So I don't think this says much of anything about single player games that hasn't already been happening for the last decade almost.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. And when you're talking about something that has a license like Star Wars that EA probably paid through the nose for, it adds a whole other layer to it as well.
Mm-hmm.
You can't afford to not have that be profitable, even EA. And if they get scared, which clearly they did, and yes, I think Mass Effect probably was a big part of that, then they're just gonna make those changes. That's what it is.
A lot of people wrote in with questions about basically what does this mean for single player games in the future and all kinds of stuff. So let's go.
But the
through
revamp is still going to be a single player game. It's just a different type of single player game.
we don't really know what it's.
We don't
gonna
know
be.
anything really about it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a long. We know it's not coming out for a long time, and we'll see what happens. I mean, I'm sure they would love to come up with a game like Destiny, where it's a game, games as service, where they can sell you all kinds.
Yeah,
of...
it's called Anthem. It comes out next year.
Yeah. Well, that's something else. I'm sure that that's where the money is.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense for a lot of reasons, and the biggest reason is that people spend money on those games. Once after they buy the game, they continue to support the game financially by buying whatever their incarnation of loot boxes is. So you can't really blame the studios or the publishers. I mean, it's our fault. But anyway, let's read some of these questions here.
Sure.
At Burgundy's Mask writes in and says, what do you think would be a fair price to sell a new game for to eliminate the need for microtransactions?
It's $99. It's $100.
There's no. It's a trick question, Wombat.
Well, yes, because there's going to be money to be made even at $100. If they can get away with selling a game at $100 and still having microtransactions to make more money, they're going to do it.
Of course, they're public.
But the
companies.
reason why the microtransactions exist in this current ecosystem is because a $60 game just isn't enough to cover the cost of making a game.
I think they would have happened anyways.
Yeah.
It's both. It's this game, we're not making enough money, and now
there is no enough money. There's no. That's like a weird thing to say. Think about a business that says.
I'm sorry, the profit margin isn't as high as we'd like it to be, based on our budgets and internal costs against the retail price for this product. We need to find a way to increase this profit margin, and loot boxes and these microtransactions was the golden goose. Now, do I agree with you that if they were able to get away with selling the game at $100 and still having those microtransactions, would they do it? 100%. But they wouldn't have to do it. And that's the question.
They do have to do it because it's a company and their job is
traded. Yeah,
they have to. They're not going to leave money on the table.
Well, that's not what I mean. I mean, they're not going to. They
will take all the money. They're going to take all.
They're going to take all the money. But in the current marketplace, without any microtransactions and selling every game at $60 and not having any other additions and no other downloadable content, a major publisher would go out of business.
But it doesn't. Well, maybe not. It doesn't really matter though. The point is that we support microtransactions. We spend a lot of money.
Well, I don't.
Well, we as gamers. I mean, I don't either. But people do it, and it's a huge part of the revenue for these games. I mean, look at the sports games like FIFA and Madden with the Ultimate Team modes. I mean, they're making billions of dollars just off of the microtransactions.
Really, it's not totally nefarious either, where they just want more and more money. It does add stability to their business as well, because then you can keep your developers in-house.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to worry about what the next game is you're making, if you can keep people on and making content for this while your creatives go off and create the next big thing, and then you kind of offboard the people who are doing the continuous support and bring them up to speed when they're needed on the new game. There's
good things about it for sure. There's good things about it for sure.
It just makes sense so that you're not.
I think
not quite as much churn.
Part of the issue with the loot box scenario, and I think we touched on it last week, and I heard some feedback about it. Is I think a lot of it has to do with the randomness of it, and that it's a game of chance. And
that's what gets us. That's what gets us hooked. It just feeds into our mental weakness.
Yep, and maybe there needs to be that balance there, where maybe not every transaction should be a game of chance.
I mean, yeah, it's not.
There's plenty of games where it's not. There are so many games that come out that you can still find exactly what you're looking for somewhere. You're just upset You're just upset if every game's not exactly what you're looking for. Like you look at the new releases every week. There's like 50 games that come out every week.
I know. I would say that Destiny, the microtransactions there don't seem to be particularly egregious. Those bright engrams don't really drop anything that I ever really want.
Do you want some ghosts and some shaders?
Yeah.
You want those shaders.
Yeah. See, and I
get
don't
pissed
even
off
want those.
every time I turn in one of those bright engrams.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe it was something great. Oh, nope. It's another ghost.
Yeah, just what I don't want. So it's interesting how, and the same thing even with, I'm playing Shadow of War. I've probably put in well over 10 hours, let's say 12 or 13 hours into that game at this point. I played a lot of it over the weekend. I'm enjoying it immensely. I'm having a really fun time playing it. The only thing that bothers me about the gold loot boxes in the game is that you can only buy them with real money. You start collecting a lot of the in-game money, and you find that you can't really use it for anything after
Right, you don't get... Yeah.
And it's like, well, what's the point of that? And so I just haven't bought any. But I've never been like, man, I really need that loot box right now. It's not something you could play that game and never even go into the marketplace. So
apparently at the end, though, you might need it to get the best ending.
Yeah, well...
But maybe you don't need the best ending. Watch it on YouTube.
Maybe you don't even need the ending. Maybe
Yeah.
you're going to play it for 30 hours and never see the ending. And, you'll be fine
and
with
be
it.
perfectly happy. I mean, that's also a very distinct possibility. So I do think that I do think that there is that balance there, and again, it also does a lot depend on the game. Do I think there are games though where, I don't know, games where the microtransactions seem like a complete necessity? Is there what's a console game where these microtransactions are required really to enjoy the game?
I mean, they don't really have that. That doesn't really exist, I think.
That's what I'm saying. So is this really much ado about nothing?
So far, well, we'll see. We have some other stories that we may feed into that. Some other questions here at Darwin Loves Devo asks, with lackluster sales of single player linear adventures, are we going to see many more AAA titles that aren't multiplayer or open world? I mean, look, it does make a lot of sense just from a business standpoint. Games, video games are business, big business. And when you have these open world and multiplayer games, you can add in a lot more microtransactions, it seems. And
you can
that's
also
where
improve those games.
it also lets the developers continue to make content for the games after it comes out for free often. Shadow of War is one of the big exceptions to that, where they're still selling a season pass.
So
Sony,
is Destiny.
Destiny, yeah.
Yeah.
But I feel like, I don't know, are people really paying for bright engrams?
No.
Season passes. See, it has a season pass.
I know, but that's the only, I'm saying, but that's their only form of microtransactions in the game right now, is buying those bright engrams, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like, really people spending money on it? It's pretty expensive too. I looked up. It's like, it's not like,
Oh no! A gold box in Shadow of War is $2.50. It's ridiculously overpriced.
But to answer this guy's question, I mean, Sony seems to still be putting out
the first parties will do it.
Yeah, and that might be what it has to be. But I've never been a huge fan of the linear. I'm not a big fan of multiplayer, generally speaking. I'm more of an open world game guy anyway. So I guess this doesn't seem to be a thing, I guess. In my brain, I'm like, yeah, so every game's going to be like Skyrim now. This doesn't seem like such a bad world to live in. Oh no, more Red Dead Redemption. More Skyrim.
right.
This is terrible.
There's definitely pluses and minuses. I think there's more positives about having these loot boxes and microtransactions in the game, because most companies don't blow it, right? I mean, even EA, like Battlefront 2, during the beta, people were complaining that the loot boxes could be pay to win, basically. And EA said, look, we're taking your feedback, and certainly we're not, locked into anything right now, and maybe they'll wind up changing it.
Did they?
Well, we won't know until the game comes out.
I mean, that's really what it comes down to. If it's pay to win, that could be an issue. If it's pay to get shaders,
right? It's hard to, and then in turn that gets the people working on the game for a long time.
It also really only really bothers me when there's no in-game way of unlocking those things. We're talking about Bright Ingrams in Destiny. We've all had more than enough Bright Ingrams just playing the game. But in Shadow of War, you can get a gold loot box by doing an online challenge, some of them.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not, you don't find them often.
Okay.
So I think that's also part of the difference. I think if it's not something you need to pay for, even in Injustice 2, you can buy the shaders that cost about $2 to $3. Actually, I think the most expensive ones are $4 each. Or most of them can be unlocked through gameplay. It's difficult, really difficult, but most of them can be unlocked through gameplay.
But what bothers me with Injustice 2 is just like Shadow of War. I mean, obviously, 2 Warner Brothers games, they're selling you the microtransactions, and they're also charging you for extra characters and stuff, not just skins. I mean, these are like characters,
the full-on characters.
Yeah, and like, come on, just pick one.
Is it going to be a season pass or the coins? Yeah, I think the coins is wholly unnecessary in this game, and it would definitely be a more enjoyable experience if unlocking skins and shaders was more of an in-game challenge type thing, and they made it a gameplay element as opposed to a monetary element. Yes, it would improve the fun factor of that game significantly, and they just had that very expensive season pass. Because, I would say that if you love this game and it's a great game and you spent $100 on it, I think a lot of people who spent $100 on this game, and I've heard from a lot of people that have spent $100 on this game, they're happy with that purchase, even knowing that it's going to be cheaper at some point. And I think that's, an important distinction. There are people that spend $100 on a game that are happy with their $100 purchase because they're getting, what they feel is everything. It's when they pull back some little things that cheapens that $100 experience. The fact that the $100 version of the game still doesn't come with Darkseid, I think is ridiculous.
Right.
And that it doesn't come with every premium skin is kind of ridiculous.
All right. At Bing Bang Boom writes in and says, gamers have a problem with microtransactions in DLC, but tend to throw money at streamers that they like. Would it be better if games just had a tip option that gave no DLC or additional content?
No. If you love a game so much that you want to give it an extra $2, why not get something in return?
Well, also, it's not like they're going to say, we're just going to do the tip thing and not try to get more money out of you. It's not like none of these companies are saying, that's enough money. We don't need any more of your money. They're going to try to take all the money. So sure, they can put in a tip thing, but also do the microtransactions too.
I could see a lot of studios going the Activision way and just making fewer games each year. Fewer bigger games.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why EA canceled the Star Wars game, is that they need to basically take stock of what they have and see what Activision did and be like,
and Ubisoft too.
And Ubisoft too, and be like, maybe we only need to make 3 games a year and not 9.
Yeah.